They think it's all over. It isn't now. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, has given an exclusive interview to GBNews in which he refused to rule out future lockdowns. Take a listen.
I can't rule out something, Esther. I can't, say that we wouldn't be forced to do non-pharmaceutical interventions again of the kind that we did. I think it would be irresponsible of any leader, in any democracy, to say that they're going to rule out something that could save life.
Welcome to hell. This is why I lost faith with Boris early this year when the Mail on Sunday reported that it was in fact Lord Frost, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Rishi Sunak who stopped Boris from cancelling Christmas. The Mail wrote that he was about to cave in to doom-monger scientists until the government's COVID hawks, critics of COVID measures, including Chancellor Rishi Sunak, swooped in and changed his mind. That's right, it wasn't Boris that saved Christmas. This freedom-loving libertarian Prime Minister says one thing and does another, something to which his many wives and ex-girlfriends will no doubt attest. Remember the Prime Minister's irreversible ending of COVID measures? Well, threatening them in the future doesn't sound very irreversible to me. And he's even invoking the same apocalyptic language as science chiefs Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance, talking about possible worse future variants which may emerge. Do you not think we've got enough problems without worrying about viruses that don't even exist yet? And when did a virus ever get worse, by the way? They usually weaken in their potency over time. Omicron is famously milder than Delia Smith's recipe for chicken tikka masala. I don't want a Prime Minister that won't rule out future lockdowns. Because this wretched strategy, which has caused so much human, societal and economic damage, has patently failed. Show me a country in the world that didn't have lockdowns, mask mandates or vaccine passports that has had a disproportionately higher COVID death toll. Many fared better, in fact. There ought to be a difference in the graph between those two types of countries, the lockdown countries and the non-lockdown countries. There should be a difference in the graph, but there is none. Proof of lockdown effectiveness is up there with Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction, the Emperor's new clothes, Elton John's hair, and the simultaneous orgasm. In other words, strangely elusive. But the naked truth is that, in my view, lockdowns caused far more harm than good, which is why it's terrifying to hear the Prime Minister continue to peddle this anti-scientific madness. And why would he? He doesn't need to say any of these things. Previous experience would tell us that we're being softened up for more of these measures in the future. Now, I want to give Boris a chance, and I want him to prove me wrong. But if Boris Johnson wants to lock us down this winter, add another £1 trillion to the national debt, and mask us up with those worthless face nappies all over again, then I want him out. I'll take anyone that won't repeat the terrible mistakes of the past. I'd rather have the crankies in charge. And they're on the show later. I might ask them if they fancy the gig. In his interview with GBNews, Boris even dared to compare himself to Margaret Thatcher. He said that Margaret Thatcher would have approached COVID in exactly the same way. What a cheek to invoke her memory and legacy and put words in her mouth. Well, here was the public response. It sank like a lead balloon. No, she wouldn't have, says Maddie. She would have checked the data herself, questioned everything and not relied on others to make the decisions. There's no way Thatcher would have suffered the teachers' union or the civil servants not going back to work. How dare Boris Johnson compare himself to her? How about this one? Not a chance, says Mitre Gary. Margaret Thatcher would have seen through the charlatan advisers and asked them what the end result of destroying the country would be. That is, as now living with COVID, there was always no other way. How about this one? Romy says Margaret Thatcher had a chemistry degree from Oxford. She wouldn't have been controlled by Whitty and Sage. She would have drawn on a wider variety of scientific views and not subscribed to the cult-like the science crap. Also, she would never have taken away basic liberties. Or how about this one? Neil, no, she wouldn't. She would have sacked Sage on day one. And there you have it. Even if a new variant is 10 times worse, which let's pray it's not, doesn't there come a point where you accept that you can't borrow any more money, that you can't close down any more businesses, lock children in their homes, or ignore other diseases? Surely the economic and human price of saving the NHS, in inverted commas, which we didn't do, by the way, is no longer an option. The problem, it strikes me, is one of politics. The Prime Minister and this current generation of scientific advisors have signed up to the dogma originating from the Chinese Communist Party of masking the public and shutting down society. They have to keep this myth alive that these measures help in order to not show that they made a mistake. But how refreshing would it be if they did just that? A new politician or a new political party would never sign up for these measures knowing what we know now. But Boris will defend them, as he has done in this GBNews interview. Keir Starmer will defend them. Joe Biden will defend them. It's probably only when this lot have gone that the truth will out. Now, I can forgive and forget, given how little we knew about the virus 2 years ago. But it's now April 2022. And knowing what we know now, for Boris Johnson to threaten more of these illiberal socialist measures is deeply wrong and achieves a level of hypocrisy and double standards that I just can't stomach. What we needed to hear from the Prime Minister is that we just can't afford another lockdown and that their effectiveness is debatable at best. We needed to hear a plan for increasing hospital capacity in the NHS, which of course is going to be necessary this winter and for many winters to come. We needed a clear message that the war on COVID is over. We can't keep doing this, folks. The country's mental health is wrecked, the economy absolutely trashed. Look at inflation, look at the national debt, look at taxes. It's a total nightmare. All self-inflicted, all because of these lockdowns that Johnson won't rule out in the future. It's my view that of many eminent scientists, and of course it's the view of some of the greatest experts in the world, COVID cannot and never could be controlled. If we have another lockdown, how much more damage can we tolerate? Can we live with 15% inflation, for example? 20%? 30%? What about the national debt? It's currently over 2 trillion quid. Should we go to 3 trillion? 4 trillion? 5? Should we just bankrupt the nation and get ourselves to where Greece were in 2008 or Zimbabwe now? The Prime Minister must know that this is wrong because he and his colleagues spent lockdown partying like it was 1999 with literal suitcases of booze going into number 10 every 5 minutes. I actually don't care about Partygate. I'm not angry about it. I'm angry about the policy of lockdown and mask mandates, which all of those staffers at number 10 clearly knew were pointless. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared getting together, unmasked, participating in quizzes, drinking games, and in the case of Matt Hancock, snogs in the corridor. I don't care about the political colour of our leaders, just that they exercise judgment, look at data, are flexible and make decisions in the national interest based upon the principles of a liberal democracy and a free society. We have to accept this virus, something that we should have done in March 2020. I honestly believe that if we had done nothing, we would be in better shape now. But I never advocated nothing. We should have focused on protecting the vulnerable whilst allowing healthy people to get on with their lives and contribute to the economy and, yes, get COVID and recover, as recommended by the Great Barrington Declaration, which was signed up to by some of the world's greatest scientists and medics. But even if we had done nothing, which was not my plan or anyone else's, the national debt would be tiny now, inflation would be low, and the economy would have billions of quid's worth of economic output sitting in the nation's bank accounts with which to protect the vulnerable and pay for the NHS. The only thing we got out of lockdown was this cost of living crisis, which will likely claim and damage more lives than COVID ever could. So now we've got a broken country, punch drunk from restrictions, on its uppers, skint, sad, divided and angry. In the end, I trust the judgment of you, the British people. I don't think the British public will put up with another winter of lockdowns and mask mandates. I always said the public were largely compliant with COVID measures in the first place because many were bribed by furlough and cheap loans, brainwashed by the press, and I pointed out that the actual bill for these measures hadn't come in yet. Well, here we are. The bill has come in now, and tragically, ordinary households cannot pay it. And the government can't really help either, because it has maxed out the nation's credit card in a diabolical overreaction to a virus which is nasty, yes, but mild and non-fatal to most. As the dreadful cost of living crisis worsens, the public, having felt the real-world consequences of these bonkers measures, will say no more. That's right, the public will say no more. To loosely paraphrase Mrs. Thatcher, Boris, you lock down if you want to. The nation's not returning.